The U, Pre-College Development Academy.
Are you ready?
Well, folks, it's that time of week again. Episode 11, PCDA TV, brought to you by the Pre-College Development Academy. We've had a huge 2 weeks behind us now, announcing a partnership with Beyond Pulse, as you can see on the screen here, as well as just signings. Generation U, the inaugural membership to Pre-College Development Academy. We are actually hosting a national signing day at 8 o'clock a week tomorrow. So that is Saturday, May 1st, 2021 at 8 p.m. Central. Earlier this month, I caught up with a very special guest. We talked about player development and coach education. I'm going to go ahead and play that video now. Obviously, we couldn't have him live. He's based in the UK, and it's 2 a.m. over there, so I didn't expect him to be waking up at that time to speak with me, or staying up until that time. So I'm going to go ahead and play that for you now. If you guys have any questions about what's going on with PCDA at the moment, please leave a message in the or leave a comment in the comment section, and I'll make sure I answer them at the end of the show. Enjoy it, folks. Today is Tony McCallum. Tony, welcome to the show, pal.
Nice to see you. Thanks, Robbie, for having me on.
No problem. Lovely to have you. So, Tony, the way I start this out, tell us a little bit about yourself, mate.
What am I now? I'm 55 now, so no spring chicken anymore. Married with children, couple of brothers in the family. I come from a large family back from the northeast of England, from Newcastle. I'm a Newcastle United fan, and I'm a golfer, a fair weather golfer. Yeah, so that's me.
Newcastle United, eh? It's not pretty for you guys right now, is it?
It's not the best of times. No, it's not.
Are you a Bruce out, or give the guy a chance, or?
We've had too long of chances. Yeah, I can't see anywhere else where the sort of level of the level of performance and the results someone would be given a chance to continue. I think football at the moment at the highest level is so demanding that if you're not successful, you're shown the door very easily, and sometimes that's a bit hasty for some. And then for others, it feels like at the moment that he sort of outlived his time there. So it'd be interesting to see what they do, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime in the near future. Yeah.
I think I think the ownership at Newcastle has always been, I know, one of the major grumbles, hasn't it? Is it the managers, or is it the ownership, or is it a combination of both? Why it's not working there?
I think to the outsiders, and we would never know as fans, you assume so much, you pick off bits in the news and such like, and try and make sense of it. But I think when the owner took over nearly 14 years ago now, there was this promise of investment and, a chance to sort of take the club on. And it had been pretty successful over the last sort of 10 or 15 years before he came in. With good managers, good owners, good investment, European football, that sort of stuff on a regular basis. And we thought we were going to get something similar, if not better. And I think over the years, we've seen a sort of lack of investment in comparison to what other clubs have gone after and how they have invested. And Newcastle's a really one-off, unique one to an extent. It's a major city in England with one team, and when you have a one team, one town club type approach, it impacts on so many things, and so therefore, when you're hoping for investment and a good team and an opportunity to try and be successful, then that doesn't come about. You start to question, is the investment right? Is the ownership right? Or the manager's right? And you do it from a fan's perspective, through generally black and white tinted glasses when you watch your home team play. But there's probably a good few years now we haven't seen what we would consider to be the best of investment. I think we had a glimpse under Benitez how he was trying to deal with the community, deal with the club, deal with the competition he was playing in, and be as successful as he could be. But we're certainly not seeing that at the moment.
Yeah, and it's a shame because Newcastle, like you said, is a massive club. The support that Newcastle United have from its fans. I know I've never actually been up there to watch an away game. I'm a Man United fan, but I've definitely been at Old Trafford, and those 3,000 Geordies cause absolute havoc. Like you can feel the stadium shaking when the Geordies are in town, and it's quite an experience. If only 3,000 people against how many United have, 62, 63,000 United fans, and you can hear the Geordies over that. It's a passionate following, and I do wish Newcastle the best, but I am not a fan of the owner myself. So hopefully, and Bruce is a legend for United, so hopefully they can figure it out. But I don't think this season. I think Bruce will be out the door in a few weeks.
I think it might get too close to the end of the season if they do try and make a decision. I think we've got sort of 9 games to go now. Historically, they've never really got rid of anybody with that length of time. I think they offered Shearer the chance to manage it when there was 8 games to go, and that he wasn't successful. And I think the longer you leave it and the less games you have, the chances to try and make an impact are reducing all the time. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. Right. Well, back to the story of Tony McCallum. Here we go. I noticed you were in the armed services for the UK, the RAF to be specific. Did you actually play for the RAF team?
I didn't. No, I didn't. When I joined the forces, this was in 1983. The level of the game inside the armed forces was phenomenal. It was as good a non-league opportunity as you could imagine. There were a lot of people who had either been at clubs and in and around the fringes of clubs and had left and joined the armed forces. But there was also the clubs looking at the armed forces for potential professionals. So the standard of the game was really high. I had some sort of trial with the under 21s when I was in at one point, but that never materialised into anything because, like I say, the game was at such a good level. But I played station level football and had really good successes in there, and probably that was where my first experiences of coaching came from, was being in the RAF, playing at a station and being coached on a regular basis. So that's where my first sort of coaching, I suppose, experiences came from.
Okay. Just a little one, history of my career. I played for England U19s or England colleges, and before we went out to Italy to the Roma Cappamundi, we played against the RAF.
Yeah.
And I think I came off the field with 2 knots on my shin, a broken nose, and a very, very sore rib cage. And I asked the gaff after the game, I said, why do we play against them? He said, well, if you can handle this lot, the Italians, the Romanians, Slovenians will be nothing. So, and it was a very physical but a very good standard. They moved the ball really, really well, and it was a fun game to play in. And obviously, with me being a Yorkshire lad, I was kind of half used to it. But then, you're playing for England and you've just played against like US and Ireland, and it's been all possession, no physicality, and then all of a sudden you're playing against the RAF, and bang, it was a fun game. It was a fun game. So.
Different
sorry?
A different reality.
Oh yeah, and it brought us down a peg or two. So we did really well when we went to Italy. We weren't the big time Charlies that we thought we were when we drew 1-1 with the RAF, and the gaffer turned around and just said, listen, lads, these lads don't train like you. They're not full time. They're not this. They're not that. They actually, they go to war zones. They have their job, and then they train around that. And you've only drawn 1-1 with them. So, you have to work because you're playing against lads who are, full national teams when we go to Italy. So you're going to have to buckle down and get after it. So it was a good lesson, to be fair. All right, going forward, who were your main influences when you were growing up?
A couple of different sort of influences, really. Some teachers when I was in school were real influences around the opportunities to play football and the support you got. My family, in terms of mum and dad, were really supportive, and probably a wider family. And I had a couple of uncles who were, one was a professional, one was a semi-professional at a high level, and I suppose they were a bit of an inspiration to me. So I sort of aspired to be something like that as a player. Never made anywhere near the sort of level of the game that they did, but they were certainly people who influenced me to take up the sport and be active in the sport and play the sport to the highest level I could, and therefore continue to stay involved in it once my playing opportunities had finished.
Yeah, and you're my third guest from the UK who has reached a very high level in the coaching world with what they do. Like I had Ian Birchnell, he's a UEFA Pro licensed coach and was over at Östersund FK for a while, and he said the same thing about his playing career. Like he wasn't up to that level, and that's what got him into coaching, and his influences around him got him into coaching. And I think the common misconception is you need to be a worldy player to get into coaching and do well, and I think that's not the case. I mean, some of the best coaches I've ever worked with or been coached by were lads who didn't really, they might have got to like third tier semi-professional or whatnot, but get them with the X's and O's, as we say over here in the US, and they do a bloody good job. That's a good message to send out, right? If it's not playing, you still can have a career in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was talking to somebody the other day about this sort of playground to podium model that people have spoken about, that you develop athletes through from a first opportunity through to performing at the highest level, whether that's in football or in anything else. And what happens beyond that piece, where you get to the end of your career, wherever that might be, whether you win an Olympic medal or a gold medal or a World Cup or whatever, do you go back into the sport, or do you continue within the sport in a different role? And I think by having exposure to coaches within my opportunities in the RAF, that certainly made me think about coaching as a potential career once I sort of stepped away from the game. I think people that I saw as good coaches and players that were influenced by good coaches was the sort of thing that I thought, well, is that something I could potentially be involved in the future? So it was something that made me think that you may not necessarily be the best performer in the sport, but you have a good understanding, and if you develop that understanding further, you'll hopefully be in a position to try and teach it to others.
Yeah, I actually 100% agree. My old man, I'll say this, he's nearly everybody we coached back in the day when I was coming up, have gone on to have, play semi-pro or coach or earn a little bit of scratch or money from the game. And my old man, he wasn't over athletic, but he understood the game. He did some of his licensure and stuff like that. And he's, up until a few years ago, he was giving back to the community and coaching a youth team and stuff like that. And, he's a cracking coach, and I just wish he'd get off his backside and go out and coach more. But, I think the game could use, especially in the UK, could use more lads like him getting back into the game and coaching. And, obviously if he was in the US, the pay to play model, the coaching salaries here are a little bit better than what typically you get for youth soccer or youth football in the UK.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
okay, what about your influences as a coach?
I suppose people that I've either worked with or been taught by probably stand out the most. When I first went into coaching, there was a guy who was leading the qualification who, when I sat down and listened and started to sort of gain this knowledge and information, I just wondered where all this stuff came from, because I'd never realized the game was as this was, being portrayed to me. So that really made me inquisitive. When I worked at the Federation, at the Football Association, I was surrounded by some very, very talented coach educators, and they were an influence on me. And people that I worked alongside as colleagues, who've either left the Federation or are still there, but were very good at sort of deepening your understanding or challenging your thinking to make you deepen your understanding. And I'll be forever grateful to those types of people. I could list them, but they're just names to most people. But to me, they were really influential. First guy was a guy called Barney Jones. People that I work with who were at the Federation was a guy called Dick Bates, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago now. And Dick was I think he was well received in the US in coaching circles with people like the United Soccer Coaches and the Federation and such. Like, he worked in Canada and worked across the world. And similarly, a colleague of his, a guy called Steve Rutter, was another one who was really influential in me as development as a coach and a coach educator. Brilliant,
yeah. So we covered it a little bit when we were talking about your time in the RAF. How did you actually get into coaching as a career, though? Obviously, you got like your feet wet a little bit in the RAF and exposure to coaching, but how did you actually get into it after your time with the RAF as a career?
Well, when I was still in the Air Force, it was about 1989. I answered an advert in a local newspaper back in Newcastle. I was still in the Air Force, and the advert was for a coaching qualification, a course. And the course was called a prelim. So at the time, there were basically two qualifications in football in England. One was called the prelim award, and the other one was the coaching badge, full coaching qualification. And I decided to go on this course because like I said, started to get a bit of an interest because of who I was being coached by and what I was being exposed to in the Air Force. And the organisation was called the Newcastle Football Development Scheme. They were run by the City Council, and they were responsible for the development of sort of coaching and playing in the area. And off the back of achieving the qualification, I picked up a bit of a part-time role coaching with them. And that was things like working in schools, at after-school clubs, and coaching in clubs and holiday camps and such like. And it really did give us a thirst for it. And when I left the Air Force, that was the sort of thing that I made a real career decision. I'd been an engineer in the Air Force. I was an aircraft engineer. And I could have stayed in aircraft engineering and gone to work for somebody and, possibly done some coaching in my spare time. But I made a decision to pursue coaching as a career, and went away and sort of gained more qualifications and studied and started off into coaching as an opportunity, like I say, delivering in schools and clubs and such like. And then that moved me on to other opportunities. Coached in sort of college level back here in England, which is sort of 16 to 19, and then semi-professional game over here. And then had some coaching opportunities across in the US. So that was my sort of journey into coaching, if you want.
And the opportunities in the US led you to meet our very own director of soccer ops, Steve Richards. I won't go into detail about your experience with Steve. So you worked for the FA, the Football Association in England, as a national coach development manager. What did all that entail? What was that all about? How did you do it? Who did you work with? Was it more working on the ed? Was it working personally with coaches?
Yeah, so this is probably going back maybe it's 15 or 16 years ago. The FA made a sort of concerted effort to start to look at coach development. It was something that was, and it's still to this day is still fairly new in a lot of national governing body thinking. That you have people that are there to help not just educate but develop. And I was offered an opportunity of an interview for a role about, like I said, 14 years ago now, and was successful, gained the job and started as part of a national workforce. So there was 16 of us around the country supporting sort of the delivery of qualifications on a local level and delivering sort of ongoing coach development opportunities. So that was where I started out. I was based down in the southwest of the country, worked alongside a colleague, and the two of us were responsible for the delivery of, like I say, different qualifications and other development opportunities. And then as coach development started to evolve at the FA, they looked to try and take what was a regional type model to a more of a local county-based model that we have here. So there are 50 odd counties associations in England who are all under the umbrella of the national governing body. And what I ended up leading was a national workforce of 40 staff that would work across these 50 associations and support coach development down to the sort of finite level, really, working with people week in, week out, within the counties, within the game, across varying levels. So from the mum and dad taking their coaching qualification for the first time, through to the aspiring coach who was working in the non-league game at a fairly high level, and probably all stations in between. And alongside the workforce of 40, I was responsible for the sort of development of qualifications. Our level 1 qualifications it was at the time that needed a revamp. So I was part of the sort of group of staff that developed that, and the UEFA B, which is one of sort of 3 awards that the Football Association have, and every other governing body in UEFA have, that aligns them to a national, it's called the coaching convention. So we have a B license, an A license, and a Pro license, which is UEFA ratified, and that's the same across all the other governing bodies in Europe. So I was responsible for the build of that over the last few years, and then on top of that, we continue to sort of build and develop a sort of ongoing or CPD opportunities for the game. So that was what I was sort of responsible for over the last sort of 13 and a half years, really.
Brilliant. So you hold your UEFA A and UEFA B licenses. You received your UEFA A in 2000. Can you tell us how the game has changed in that 21 years, specifically coach education?
Yeah, there's been some, I suppose, dramatic changes in terms of the structure and the approach to the A license and B license. But the qualifications are still fundamentally the same. You know, you're talking about coaching in the 11v11 game at the highest level within your country. And for coaches in England, that is the Premier League. So the qualification as an A license would allow you to be a first team coach in a Premier League club. You've got to appreciate that for however many thousands of people that would hold the A license, there are only potentially 20 first team coaches jobs in the academy in the Premier League, and probably now there's more people with pro licenses holding those positions, but still the qualification is the highest level of of coaching qualification in the country. And like I say, the structure and the approach might have changed, but fundamentally it's still the same in terms of coaching in the 11v11 game. There was probably nowhere near the numbers that are involved in the game now compared to 20 years ago. From our mini soccer opportunities through to the sort of senior adult game, there's been massive growth. And, that's been across the men's game, the women's game, the youth game, and then into areas like disability football and such like. So the demand for the qualifications has changed. There's more people doing the qualifications and more people achieving the qualifications now to what there was sort of 20 years ago. So that's been some of the big changes. On top of that, the FA, probably from around 2005, looked to try and develop a series of youth qualifications, and they really were game changers here with regards to influencing coaches and coaching around dealing with the player. So a series of youth qualifications were established and delivered over the last few years, which has seen a bigger change in coach development and coach education here.
Yeah, and as the FA, I've noticed they've done some modules on their website and stuff like that, like specific or position specific. Obviously goalkeeper coaching's been a thing for a while now, obviously, but like set plays and other things. The FA are actually addressing that, aren't they, in their coach education, so people can specifically be more or certified or qualified for these things, right? Yeah,
they are, and it probably stems from, I was looking at this earlier on, 2000, in the year 2000, the Premier League had 18 managers from within the UK and Ireland, and there was only 2 non-UK, if you want, managers in the 20 teams, and that was Arsene Wenger, who was at Arsenal, and Claudio Ranieri, who was at Chelsea. Everybody else was from within, the British Isles and Ireland. And the involvement of the game over the years and the influence of probably coaches from other countries coming into England has meant that the qualifications have had to provide a different structure and approach. And I think, with greater insights and data, the qualifications have changed. I think with the understanding of different roles and different positions, that's changed the qualifications. I think people understanding how different systems and formations can affect the way that you play, either with the ball or without, again, has probably informed change in the qualifications. And then, like you said, things that have become more specific. So goalkeeper coaching, we've now got coaches who are predominantly looking at just set plays. And in some parts of the game, we've got coaches who deal with just in possession and coaches deal with out of possession. So you can see where other sports and other countries have influenced the way that qualifications have started to evolve over the years.
Yeah, and it's constantly changing, isn't it? They keep saying the modern game, but it just changes like every time you switch on the TV or obviously COVID, but get to a live game. Kind of forgotten what that's like, but every time you do see a game, there is always something new or something adapted. Like Liverpool with their success last year, and their throwing coach, the Danish bloke, and then Carlos Queiroz when he was at Man United a few years ago, bringing in a specific corner taking coach, and little things like that. It's just always changing in the modern game. Education. I'm glad the FA are moving along with the times, so British coaches still have that chance to compete for those top jobs. If at all possible. Mm-hmm. So moving on. Currently, you're a coach development consultant. What has been your most exciting project since leaving the FA?
Well, what sort of dealing with the situation that we have at the moment with everybody in lockdown, it's all on a remote base at the moment, and a bit of ifs and buts, and hopefully these things will come to fruition. But potentially some qualifications I'm in the process of sort of building for some federations out in Asia, and potentially with a couple of countries in CONCACAF to look at an advanced coaching license. If they come about, then that'll be great. It'll be later in the year, so those are exciting at the moment. Like I say, hopefully they'll come to fruition, but we don't know when things will be lifted for everyone really. So we'll wait and see on that. And I've just been doing some work recently with a friend of mine, a guy called Steve Hoffman, who is he's the technical or state director in Cal South in California. So I've been doing some work with Steve and his coaches over there. And then another guy I know, a lad called Darren Laver, who's in Tennessee, and he runs a site called VDoc, Virtual DOC. And I've done some stuff with him as well. So really exciting to do some remote work at the moment.
I bet you can't wait to dust off those boots and get back on a field and run some sessions though, right?
Oh yeah, and I think everybody who's dealing with the same situation as we all are involved in the game is desperate to get back to the game. We hope that in England the game will return, probably not to normality, but will return certainly for the youth from next Monday, the 29th of March. That'll give the chance for kids to start back playing and coaches to start coaching and coach developers like myself to go and try and support. The non-league game probably isn't going to return this season for most people. So that may well just give us a chance to sort of gather stock and consider what it's going to look like for next season, when hopefully we'll return to people being able to watch the game and the game being able to be played between teams like it has been in the past. So we'll welcome back the game as soon as we can.
The light's at the end of the tunnel. I know the UK is doing pretty well with their vaccines and stuff like that. So, fingers crossed it all works out and the home of football can get back to doing what it does best.
Let's hope so.
Sunday league kicking lumps out of each other. No, I'm just kidding. So what do you know about the US youth soccer system? Obviously you've done a bit of work all over the world and quite a few fellas over here in the US. What are your opinions of it, and what do you know of it?
I think the first time I came to the US to coach was 1998. So what's that? That's 20 something years ago, isn't it? The structures and such like have changed dramatically over the years. I know there was the inception of the sort of development academy programs, and then subsequently the changes to that in not too recent times. I know of the MLS academies, and in terms of what it is they're trying to do with regards to developing players for their sort of first teams. The US, I think you touched on this earlier on. The US has a playing model, a pay-to-play model, which is different to England. But I understand the model and recognise the investment that parents and clubs put into their players. The ODP system has been something that has helped support player development over the years, and that's allowed kids then to move on and play in the collegiate system. So I'm aware of a few different things that exist inside the US.
Right, that actually leads into my next question there, Tony. So what do you know about the US college system?
Well, a good friend of mine is a D1 coach in South Carolina. So through him, I probably have had a good insight over the years, and a few other people that I've sort of got to know in America over the years have helped me sort of make sense of the system. And I think when you try and explain it to people back here, because things have numbers, people assume promotion and relegation, because that's what happens in football in this country. If you're in League 2, you try to get to League 1 and so on. So I'm aware of, Division 1 to Division 3 in terms of the NCAA. The NIA opportunity and the junior college opportunities also exist. Potential for scholarships for students, or part scholarships. I'm aware of that. Within the female game, the sort of Title IX has been, I think, a massive thing for the US in terms of developing the female player, because it has given that level of equality and opportunity for the female game. And you can see the benefits that the US national team has from not only the pool of players that they pick from, but the pool of talented players that they pick from because of that. Also aware of the playing system and the season. So it is very compact in the college setup. You're trying to start your pre-season in sort of August. Your season could be done and dusted by the end of October, early November. So it is a very short window in which to play, and potentially going through the playoffs and such like in the later part of the year. But generally, you're done by Christmas at the latest. Spring season very limited in terms of the amount of games, and more on a sort of friendly type basis instead of standing for sort of points and a title or something. But also aware that when college coaches are working with their players, they'll pick a schedule or put together a schedule that has conference and non-conference games to give them levels of opportunity for their players, and then potentially going through playoff systems and into the national tournament each year. So yeah, I'm aware of what the system looks like. Have never been part of it. It was something I really I looked into a few years ago, and I was interviewed for a job in Indiana, but unfortunately it didn't work out for me or the university because of visas. But it was something I was definitely interested in being involved in.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're probably the first non-resident of the US who I've spoke to on the show who's actually explained the college system probably better than I can, to be fair. And I was a player in it and a coach in it. So with your knowledge of the college system here, you mentioned players only get to play and train for 3 to 5 months out of the year, if they are lucky. How would you say that would affect the development of players in the system?
I think if you look at any sort of talent development model, and that you can look across any sport, what you need is opportunities to play, and generally across a season. And a season-long approach for most sports would be 9, 10, 11 months in terms of a process. And that would include training and games and various types of games, whether that was week in, week out league opportunities or cup competitions or tournaments. They are part of that development sort of model. So I think if you have a condensed model, which is what sort of exists within college at the moment, there can be some big implications with regards to that long-term development, because what you will get is a large amount, maybe it's high intensity, and the duration, like we said, is condensed. So there's a lot of work happening inside such a short period of time, with not necessarily the chance to see long-term development opportunities or development happening really. And so I think when you add the likes of travel and study and work on top of that to the collegiate player, it does become a challenge for their development. But I understand there's been a call for a dual season for a number of years now from coaches within soccer. And I do wonder if the pandemic at the moment and the situation where people are playing a spring season at the moment would possibly help the cause and present a different case to be able to say, look, this dual season and this extension of the season and the playing opportunity for soccer really could happen without the impact, and actually prolong the development of players and recognise the collegiate system as part of that longer development than maybe it's the condensed version they've got at the moment.
Yeah, and to be fair, I know the NCAA are doing just the spring season, but NAIA, they played their regular season in the fall, and then they moved their postseason, so their playoffs and nationals are going to be here in the spring semester. So they're just picking back up now, playing their little friendlies and stuff like that before they move into playoffs or conference playoffs phase of the season. And my wife is an athletic trainer, as they're known over here, or a physio back home, and she's noticed there hasn't been as many injuries either, and players pushing through injuries in order to play in playoffs and stuff like that. So even just the athlete health aspect of it, of a dual semester season, is it's something to look at. I don't think, especially the NCAA, I don't think they're going to look at it properly, unfortunately. But that's the NCAA, and I'm not going to get political on it. But that's my opinion. I wish they would. As somebody who played the collegiate system over here, our season ended in October, and then the balls went away until March. So October, November, December, January, February, March. That's 5 months without touching a ball, and that was. Don't get me wrong, I was in the gym and I came out a beefcake. I wasn't sad about the biceps and the six-pack, but, all I wanted to do was kick a ball. So hopefully we can change the system. But moving on, there's a lot of young American talent headed over to the European leagues, having success. Do you think the US can win a World Cup in the next 20 years? If so, why? If not, why?
Yeah, can you just explain both sides of that argument? I think everybody wants to win a World Cup. Every team in the world is setting out on that journey. I was talking to a guy the other day who is the technical director of the British Virgin Islands, and I know him through coach education here. He was on a course with me a few years ago, and we caught up maybe 6 months ago now, and he's working there, and they're starting out on their World Cup journey. They may never get to World Cup finals, but they start out on that journey the same as every other nation in the world does. And I think if you've got players who are now exports for the game and can go and play the game in different countries, it'll do nothing but benefit the national team. We have it in England now where lots of players in the past have never left England to go and play elsewhere. They play in England because it's the highest level, and if they're not playing, they don't consider necessarily going elsewhere. Until recently, when we've had a few players go into Germany and Holland and come back far better because of the experience. So I think if there are players heading from the US into Europe, then they're definitely going to have a series of experiences which are different to what they would get in the MLS, and it would benefit the US national team. But the leagues in Europe are attracting foreign players from all over the world. The biggest challenge is the visa implications and the employment law, if you want, in the various countries. I think it was something like you had to have played in 75% of national team games in the last 2 years to make you eligible to gain a visa. So that you can see that the criteria to try and get in is difficult. But if you meet the criteria and you get access, then that exposure can only benefit, like I say, the national team. But can the US win the World Cup? The biggest challenge is that the winners of the World Cup have come from Europe and South America, full stop. The teams who have played in the World Cup final have come from Europe and America and South America. Nowhere else has gained access to that, final two. Asia with sort of South Korea and Mexico from Central America, probably the closest we've had in recent times. Mexico were very successful with their youth teams in the U17 World Cup and U20 World Cup a couple of seasons ago, and then in the Olympics. So the level of opportunity that they were getting and the exposure, if you want, to high level competition was something that benefited them. And I think if the US are going to get to somewhere like winning a World Cup or competing at the top end of the World Cup, there's probably a number of things that have to be in place. Listening to Gareth Southgate when I was at the FA, and he would talk to us fairly regularly about, what he was doing with the national teams and the thing he was trying to achieve. They had to get exposure to playing different teams in preparation for a tournament. They have to consider tournament football. It's different to a league season. So do you put that into your preparations? Do you have a long-term approach? So if you're in a World Cup set of qualifiers where you start out nearly 2 years before the tournament itself, do you make sure that within that program you are, making sure that you're getting access to the right level of competition and, the competition, the demands, if you want, of those fixtures look similar to what happens in tournament. The big thing that's changed in Europe has been the UEFA Nations League, where there's an in-between tournament now for teams to compete in, which gives the friendlies that we used to play a different emphasis, where you're playing against teams and the teams have been ranked and your level of competition is higher. And if you get success, you go through to a Nations League final. So that's trying to help the teams here. So, can the US get something similar? One thing Southgate used to say to us was, if we just do the same as what everybody else does, we'll always be where we are. So we've got to do different. So we have to look at, how other teams do things, but at the same time, don't necessarily copy them, because you'll only just get to where they're at. You've got to think differently and, potentially devise training programs and, teams and systems of play and such like that will be different to what other people do. And I think things like utilizing the conditions of things like knockout competitions in your game structure can only help but build understanding and mentality for the players. And if you can get those sort of things in place, you've got a chance then to go, last 16, last 8, last 4. And if you're into that, then then there's a real chance you could get towards a final. But like I said, there are so many teams across the world striving to do that. And if the US want to get there, then I'm sure that they've got the resources to be able to do it. It's just trying to maybe put that in place to enable them to go after that. Is it 26 that the competition's back in the US? Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2026. Oh, it's,
Yeah.
Is it US Canada or US Canada joint bid, wasn't it?
Yeah. And if if they can perform well there, which I think they've got a really good chance to do, because it's in their own country, and yes, there are time zones and temperatures and all that to deal with, which are different to other countries who host the competition. But you would like to think they've got a better chance on home soil to be able to impose their way of playing onto the opposition that they come up against. So that could be a real opportunity for them to springboard towards getting towards the latter stages of a competition.
Yeah, I think the home advantage and the home crowds, obviously soccer's growing day by day here in the US. So I think your point of the 2026 should be a target for the men's national team to really go for success. Get that 12th man working for them, I guess, with the crowds. So we'll move on from that one. Last question for you. Do you have any fun stories from your career?
I think in terms of delivering coach education, you always come across something as whether that's something somebody says or something somebody does. But a couple of things that probably spring to mind, and that I've experienced, have just involved me really. So I was working in China for the Football Association, delivering some qualifications to coaches in China, and the resources that we had got impounded, and we couldn't get them out of customs. They were kept. So we had to work out how the next course, which was starting the next morning, we could provide them with a resource. And the only thing we had was the presentations. So one of the Chinese staff said, well, do you have the presentations as PDFs? I said, oh yeah, we can give you them. And what they had done in advance of us with the qualification, they translated all of the presentations into Chinese and English, so we could put a slide up on the screen which was in Chinese for the audience to read, and we could see the slide itself in English, which was brilliant. It was a really clever way of presenting. Anyhow, we gave the PDFs over to the member of staff at 4:30 in the afternoon, and by 8 o'clock the next morning, we had a full set of resources for every individual coach that were all individualized and written in Chinese and English and in full color. They were far better than the resource that had been impounded. But yeah, they managed to turn it around within sort of 14 hours. It was a bit crazy, but very resourceful people.
That's epic. That is epic.
And
Did
then,
they give a reason as to why the resources were impounded? I'm guessing it was one of those first for sport binders that you get on the courses.
Yeah,
or
something similar to that. Yeah, and I think what we were told was they were addressed to the wrong person at the British Council who work out in China, and to allow them into the country, they had to go through whatever the next level of person was or whatever. And so unfortunately it was either a mistake on who it was addressed to, and therefore it got stopped. But it was what it was. But like I say, the people were so resourceful, it was unbelievable, and we managed to have everything produced for the next morning, which was phenomenal. But probably my funniest one was working out in Africa again for the federation, and I was in a place called Lesotho. And Lesotho is a landlocked country in the middle of South Africa. So it's a very mountainous place. And to get there, we flew into Johannesburg and then flew on to Lesotho to the capital city, was called Maseru. And we were delivering a course, and there was the coaches had a real fixation with the plastic cones that we used, the markers. And of course, they never had any. But one guy said to me, "Oh, we use cereal bowls to make our markers to mark out the pitch." I thought, how clever is that you come up with something like use of a cereal bowl? But then this other person said, "Oh, we collect water bottles and we fill them full of sand, and then we paint them different colours, and they become the markers. And we can mark out the pitch, and we can show where the goal is and the different areas, and the kids play within that." And these kids were playing generally in bare feet. And I said, "Oh, that's so clever." I said, "Really ingenious to come up with something like that." I said, "What did you do before you used bottles?" And this woman said, "Oh, we used to paint rocks." And I've sort of looked as if she's going to crack a smile in a moment, and she didn't. I said, "What, rocks, as in a big lump of rock?" And she said, "Oh, yes, we would paint them white, and that would mark the edge of the pitch." So I've got this image in my head of these kids running around in bare feet and these rocks marking the pitch out. And just as she turns to walk away, she said, "And you know what? They never kicked one twice." And I didn't know what to say and where to go, but that little piece will live with me forever, that these kids, their only way of if you want of staying safe was never to kick a rock, because it would hurt. But it was brilliant. So plastic bottles filled full of sand as a replacement for cones, and don't kick rocks because it hurts.
Tell you what, that's a great life lesson, to be fair, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, that is a quality story. I love the China one. We're going to impound your educational materials, and then don't kick rocks, and if in doubt, fill up some bottles with sand and get after it.
Yep.
No, I love it. I love absolutely brilliant, and you've experienced some fantastic things. we have pretty much run out of time here, bud, and I've had an absolute blast. It's flown. Thank you for joining me.
No problem.
I would love to have you back on the show again. And also, I'm going to shoot you an email because I'm writing an article right now about promotion and relegation in the US. So I would love to have your 2 cents on that if you're willing to do that for me. I'll shoot you an email when we hang up here.
No problem, Rob. Yeah, that'd be lovely.
Brilliant.
I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did with Tony McCallum. Lots of good stories. Really hoping I can get him back on the show again because, yeah, I mean, the guy's just got stories upon stories upon stories of his experiences in different countries, helping different federations and associations develop their coach education. Make sure you tune in. We won't be going live on Friday night of next week. We have a special day, our very own National Signing Day. We'll be going live 8 o'clock on Saturday, the 1st of May, 8 o'clock Central, for Pre-College Development Academy, Generation U, #GenU, National Signing Day. We're really excited about it. If you want more information, visit www.precollegeda.com. Check us out on Facebook. Give us some love on Twitter. Get liking and sharing on Instagram, and check out our YouTube channel. That's all that we've got time for this week, folks. This is Robbie Carroll, PCDA TV. Have a good night.
The U, Pre-College Development Academy.
Are you